Welcome to More Than a Few Words, marketing conversation for business owners. This is your host, Lorraine Ball. And today we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is starting a business. Maybe you're there right now. Maybe you're ready to launch a product. Maybe you're there right now, or maybe you're looking to add a new product to your business and trying to figure out how to do all of that without investing millions and millions of dollars right up front. And I could not think of a better person to have this conversation with than Jason Hubbard. Jason has literally grown up in startups, including helping to grow three top 100 incorporated fastest growing private companies. He's now running his own technology enabled growth services agency, Demand Magic, and he helps companies build scalable demand generation engines that supercharge growth. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. It's a pleasure to join.
It's my pleasure to have you here and to talk about starting a startup or launching a product the way many of us do with little or no budget. What do you think some of the myths or the mistakes are that businesses make when they jump into the fray?
Oh man, there's a lot of them. It's a loaded question. I think honestly, the biggest mistake that people start jumping into it is how long is it going to take to get to a place where this is actually a sustainable business. So people inevitably underestimate how long that's going to take, how much runway they need around that, and kind of what all is going to go into it, including the amount of blood, sweat, and tears that go into being successful. I'm pretty notorious for whenever I'm asked to come talk to a group of potential entrepreneurs, that I'll spend the bulk of the time telling them how this is the worst idea they've ever come up with. And I get towards the second half of it. I was like, if you're still with me, then we'll start going into how do you actually do this thing. But I think a lot of people go into it, or most people go into it, underestimating what all is going to be involved in it. And I mean, as many times as I've done it, I'm guilty of it almost every time. I forget how heavy that initial lift is.
Absolutely. But I think there are, and I think you would agree that there are technology tools right now that can really help. They can reduce your cost and make your job easier. What would you what would you say are some of the essential pieces of that tech stack that businesses need to be investing in right away?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. Hands down, the number one is having some sort of a marketing automation tool or platform. Email remains the most cost-effective way of getting messaging out and getting in front of people. It's going to be the centerpiece to any sort of a content-led demand gen or growth strategy because the content's only going to be as valuable or as effective as how well you can get that out in front of people and make them aware of it. And you're only going to have so much reach on social media. It takes a long time to get SEO and ranking and stuff like that out there. Where people are going to find it organically. And so email is going to be the number one way that you do that. Also enables you to be able to automate a lot of the things that you're doing. It allows you to be able to track and see what people are doing on your website, what they're engaging with, stuff like that. Because first party intent signals that you're able to gather and generate as far as who's visiting the site, who's consuming content, who's opening emails, who's clicking on links, stuff like that. Those are going to be the most powerful intent signals that, no matter what, stage you are in an organization, in your growth journey, anything like that, to help you identify those people that are most qualified and most ready to have a sales conversation and ultimately purchase. And so, marketing automation is absolutely essential to that. The other corollary to it is, okay, you've got a marketing automation platform and you're going to start working on building your list of people to reach out to and stuff like that. But most of us are going to need a way to jumpstart that. And so you're going to need a data source of some kind, to be able to go and identify what your ideal customer profile is, what the companies are you should be targeting, as well as some of those people you should be reaching out to at those organizations. And then the third, and this is not necessarily technology, can be, can't be, but finding some additional source for intent signals that's going to be third party intent signals. So stuff that you're not necessarily generating yourself, but it's going to help you really hone in on what that target audience is that you should be spending your time and attention on.
Sweet. And I'm going to ask you this next question because, this is where you're playing now in this area of demand generation and getting people excited about your product and service. And what trends do you see that are sort of shaping growth, demand generation landscape, and particularly which of those trends do small business owners need to be paying attention to?
It's a great question. So the number one trend that I'm seeing right now, and I'm encountering it all over the place, including we're doing a weekly LinkedIn Live with one of my clients, Rep Genius, where every Thursday at 1 o'clock, several of us sort of leaders in the space and growth hackers and stuff like that are getting together, and we're talking about quote unquote outbound 2.0. And the upshot of that is, across the board, and you're seeing this with, what's going on in layoffs in the tech space and stuff like that. Outbound SDR, BDR teams are really, really struggling right now. And that's because we've really leaned too hard on the model of like, we can go out and hire people just getting started in their careers, oftentimes with no sales experience at all, and we can put them in a seat and we can give them some technology to be able to accelerate their amount that they can reach out, whether that's on the phone or email or LinkedIn or wherever that is, and operate under the assumption if we put enough butts in seats and we put enough through the funnel, that some stuff's going to come out the other side of it. And that's increasingly not the case anymore. And it's the reason why you're seeing like mass layoffs of hundreds of sales reps and stuff like that at these companies, because the model is largely broken. Um, and so, that could be and could not be something that, is particularly germane for somebody early on. Just kind of depends on whether that was on their list of sort of growth strategies to try and get themselves up and off the ground. And that's not to say like outbound has no place. In fact, I think outbound is one of the most essential steps somebody starting a new business or starting a new product does, is actually go out there and do things that are not scalable, namely go have lots of one-on-one conversations with people. But the idea that they're going to go hire reps and then put them on a sequencing tool or something like that and feed them a bunch of email addresses and it's going to generate much, those days are largely gone, unfortunately, I'm afraid to say. And so I think that's really the biggest trend that I'm seeing right now. And it's really kind of upended a lot of things, a lot of people's models. And, it's been multiple years in the making, but it's really sort of come to a head in everything that's happened here over the last year or so. And, a lot of changes going on in the marketplace.
So,
So
so if
that's
if if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is it's not that the outbound one-on-one kind of marketing or very, very targeted marketing isn't effective, but it's the reliance on technology to support your unskilled workforce.
Yeah, well, unskilled workforce, but also just sort of the spray and pray approach. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna load up, and expect a rep to do 100 plus dials a day and send out 200 emails a day, and just based off pure volume, we're gonna get something significant that comes out the other side of it. Not only is that not effective anymore, but it's actually doing significant damage to a lot of organizations where if you've got a rep that goes in and does that and doesn't do it well or loads in some bad data or something like that, all of a sudden you can very quickly wind up with a domain where your reputation is so damaged that nobody from your company can get emails to land anymore. And obviously that's a huge, huge problem if you try and do something and you've got people trying to close deals and stuff like that, and you can't actually break through or actually get in anybody's inbox.
Absolutely. So that also argues for really at all levels being very selective about how you use email and how you use these different tools. And this is such an interesting balance because on the social media side, we're seeing almost a return to that spray and pray kind of approach where the push is to get as many videos as you can out there and just get views and just get views. And so it's really interesting that you're saying that on this more on the sales side and on the more intimate side, you actually have to be more selective than you ever, than maybe you were 5 years ago.
Yeah, you have to be more selective, but I think the other big piece of this, and this is where it's absolutely crucial, is these silos and firm lines between things like marketing, demand gen, sales, outbound stuff like that, which at a huge number of organizations, this has never made any sense to me. Like, these are still divided up, and nobody's really talking to each other. Nobody's really coordinating across those functions and stuff like that. And that's a big problem whenever you're facing what we're facing right now. And on the flip side of it, what I've seen is if you run those outbound motions as part of a coherent demand gen strategy, it's extremely effective. But
Mm-hmm.
it's effective in subtle ways. Notably, like what I've had as experiences, the reps actually have very little of people actually replying directly to them. But that's not to say that their effort and their outreach and that channel is not driving things and moving the needle. Because I've seen whenever I've run campaigns with and without that manual outreach by reps, and I convert about twice as many accounts whenever it's a combined motion as whenever I'm just doing pure demand gen. Or on the flip side of it, if I'm running like account based marketing air cover with ads in tandem with outbound from reps, then my cost per conversion on those ads is about 50% less than running ads without that outreach. And so, even though for the most part people aren't actually replying directly to those reps, I will always give them credit for what they're doing because I can definitively show this is moving the needle and making all of the demand gen efforts that much more effective.
Awesome. Well, Jason, this has been fabulous. I think there's some really good tips here for business owners to keep in mind this idea that you've got to be thinking about both the lead generation and the marketing messaging and really pulling all those pieces together. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Absolutely. This has been a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm going to encourage anybody, if you're curious to learn more about what Jason is doing and what he's talking about with demand generation, there'll be a link in the show notes to demandmagic.ai. Thank you again, Jason.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
If you've enjoyed today's conversation, if you'd like to find other resources for your business, check out digitaltoolbox.club. Look for webinars and worksheets on using email and social media marketing to grow your business. This has been another episode of More Than a Few Words. Thanks for listening.